So today I'm going to take you through the process of traditional bark tan leather. Unlike what I'm wearing right now, which is referred to as buckskin, this is a different process with a different end result. I'm going to accomplish this task using a substance called tannins, where tannin gets its name. So tannins are a defense chemical that's ubiquitous throughout nature. It's bitter and astringent in its nature, and it exists in certain trees and plants in really high concentration. I'm going to be using the oak bark, and I'm going to be using hemlock bark to tan the two hides that I have. Both the hides I have are sheep hides, but you could do the same process with other hides as well. One of them is already processed out and ready to begin the tanning process. The other one I still need to remove the hair and do a couple steps to get it to that same place. So I'll be able to take you through pretty much the entire process. I got this tote here filled a little over halfway up with water, and I have about a half a gallon of Ziploc baggie of horticultural lime, and I'm going to put this into the water. The horticultural lime will change the pH of this hide, and if I leave it soaking in here and mix it about once or twice a day, here in about 4 to 5 days, that hair is just going to slip right off. Get this in here. We'll slip that hair before we know it.
How do you think it's going so far?
You know, I think so far it's going pretty good. Everything's going according to plan. We've had some hiccups in the weather, but overall, we're making do with the situation we got, and we're making progress, and we're moving forward. You know, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind, because the world doesn't stop moving. Had it soaking for 4 days. I pull on the wool here. It just comes right out of the hide. There's virtually no resistance. And that's what you're really looking for to know that the hide's ready. There's a couple things you want to keep in mind when removing hair for bark tan leather. Unlike buckskin, where you're removing the hair and the small layer underneath it, referred to as the dermis, with bark tan you want to leave that dermis layer on top of the skin. So with hides you have hair, dermis, and skin. Buckskin, you just want to get down to that skin. With bark tan, you want to leave that dermis on top of that skin, and that's what gives that leather that sheen and gives it some more waterproofing abilities, unlike buckskin. But you want to be careful not to damage that dermis when getting the hair off. In a lot of places, you can literally just push the hair off, and that's your best bet for not damaging the dermis. But in some places, you need to get involved a fleshing tool or a draw knife that's been dulled dramatically. And in this case, I'm not even using it like this. I'm actually using the back end of it and drawing down to pull that hair out of the skin, like so. And that's going to prevent me from, or make it less likely for me to damage that dermis. Looks pretty good, and now I can move on to the next stage, and that's called deliming the hide. So the lime that I soaked my hide in, I want to make sure all of it's forced out of the hide before I begin the tanning process. And I can do that just by simply putting it in a fast-moving stream and letting it sit for about a day, and that will force all of that substance away from the hide. I'm going to go ahead and take this hide, which I've already de-haired and de-limed, and get it soaking in the creek as well, because I'm going to need it rehydrated before I begin the tanning process. So here's an example of a chestnut oak tree. And I'm going to be tanning one of my hides with the bark of this tree, and then I'm going to be tanning my other hide with the bark of the hemlock tree. But the reason I've chosen the chestnut oak tree, given that there's many oaks in this region of the southern Appalachians, is because the chestnut oak tree is particularly high in tannins, and it's extremely common here. So those two factors make it an excellent choice. My method for collecting my bark is going to be taking small patches from a bunch of different trees, with the hopes that I don't kill any tree in the process of making this film. So if I collect bark but I take a bunch from one tree and I go all the way around that tree wringing the bark off of it, I'm going to cut off a lot of the nutrient supply to the upper part of the tree, and that tree will likely die. So if I just take a small patch from each tree, then likely they'll all be able to recover and still thrive.
Stay connected.
Just gonna go ahead and harvest one more tree's worth, then we'll take it down and we'll finish up processing the bark.
Can I have half of your bark?
Hanging out here with my buddy Sammy from Samuel Kills. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Super sweet channel. But yeah, we're both doing the same thing right now. He's processing out some chestnut oak just by hand, and I'm going to be doing the same thing, except I'm just going to introduce this machete into the mix. The whole idea behind this is you want to get as much surface area as possible of this bark in your water, and that water is going to extract the tannins from the bark. So if it's big chunks, it's going to have a harder time extracting all of that tannin. The finer you get it, the more tannins it's going to get out of the bark. And since we injured trees to do this, I want to make the most of it. Another day, and I'm going to try a little bit of a different method here. I brought some yard clippers. Just a little bit less likelihood of chopping off my fingers is the idea. Gonna go ahead and move back to this machete. I might lose a finger, but if I keep using those clippers, I'll be done at midnight, so. I've been chopping and I've been clipping for a little bit too long, and it's time to move forward.
Smack it. One more. You're brilliant.
Alright, let's see what we got here. It's hard to tell, but worth a shot. I'm gonna go ahead and get it all together and put it up for now, and we'll get back to it tomorrow.
You look good.
Thanks. The second one that I'm going to tan is going to be with this hemlock. So it also has a high level of tannins in it, but it is more red in color in terms of the bark. So this one will give a more reddish hue, where the chestnut gives a more chocolatey brown hue. And I'm just going to do one hide of each and compare and contrast each of them. Baby, we're living! Alright, so I'm back from gathering my hemlock bark, and I'm just going to start chopping it up and processing it like I did the chestnut oak. The next step is to create what's called a bark liquor. And a bark liquor is basically a tannin extraction into water. So basically a really strong bark tea. And then that bark tea that's rich in tannins is then what I'll put my hide into, and then my hide can absorb those tannins and begin the tanning process. But in order to do that, I need to make a fire pit real quick so that I can get that water heated up to make that liquor. I want to keep it going like this for about 3 hours total. I want to keep it just below a simmer, so hot, but not simmering or boiling. And I just want to stir it every 15-20 minutes or so just to help get those tannins out. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty chill from this point on, and I'm just going to hang out, let it do its thing, and enjoy this beautiful day. I did 2 fresh boils of that chestnut oak bark, and I put them both into this bucket, and so this is my super concentrate bark liquor. And then this is the stuff that I've already boiled, and I added them both into one bucket, and I put water in it and let it soak overnight. And I'm going to go ahead and put this stuff back in that metal bucket as much as I can fit in there, and I'll do another boil with the stuff that I've already done one time. And what that's going to allow is it's going to allow me to make another batch of bark liquor, but it's going to be weaker this second time around. And that's going to be the stuff that I want to start my hide off with. You don't want to put your hide in a super strong concentrated bark liquor right off the bat. You want to ease it into the process. It absorbs more tannins if you allow it to go slow. So I'm going to put it in the weak batch first, and then I'll add the bark liquor as time goes on until we get to a fully tanned hide. So here's the chestnut oak solution that I'll be starting off with. It's the second extraction of that bark that I did the original run on. And then I added in about 1/3 of a 5-gallon bucket of just normal water to it, just to dilute it a little bit more, because I really want to make sure the hide starts off slow and I work my way up. And also to give a little bit more water in this tote here, so that the hide has more room to swim around and more of that hide has surface contact with the tannins, allowing it to tan more evenly. So I want to go ahead and get my hemlock bark liquor to the same place where my chestnut oak is. so that I can start both of my hides at the same time and it's easier to keep track of. So my chestnut oak is ready to go, my hemlock concentrate's ready, and tomorrow I'll do the second brew on the already used material, and I'll pour that in here, and then we can begin the hide tanning process. So it's morning 2 of the tanning process, and something you want to keep in mind early on like this is you want to move the hides around regularly. Where the hides fold on themselves and where they press up against the side of the tote, they don't absorb as many tannins as the other parts. And if this goes on long enough, it can cause serious splotching, and that splotching can carry on to your end product. So by moving around the hides once every couple hours for the first couple days, you can mitigate the likelihood of this splotching. After the first couple days, the process slows down dramatically and you can just move them around once or twice a day. But at first you want to do it regularly, so just keep that in mind. So it's day 3 of the hide tanning process, and the hides are coming out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce a couple new steps to the process to help these hides continue to tan. The first thing I'm going to do is called scudding, which I'll show here in a second. And then the second thing I'm going to do is bump up the strength of the solution. So I'm beginning the process of scudding out the hide. And basically all I'm doing is I'm continuing to clean up this flesh side, and I'm squeegeeing out some of the water that's in this hide. And by doing this every few days, I can allow that hide to absorb more tannins because I'm squeegeeing out the water, and then it's able to suck in more tannin. So now I'm going to go ahead and bump up the strength of my solution. And I'm going to do that by adding in some of my bark liquor concentrate. One thing you want to keep in mind when doing this is you want to take out the same amount of liquid that's already been spent in your solution as you're about to add in of concentrate. And just allows everything to stay concentrated over time, and you're not diluting by the sheer volume of liquid. I just went ahead and cut into the corner of one of the thicker parts of the hide near the neck to see how far my tannin solution has penetrated. And you can see it's still white in the middle there. So I still have a ways to go before this hide is fully tanned. So I feel confident going ahead and pretty dramatically bumping up the strength of my solution and letting my hide sit even longer. Alright, so it's been a week since I last checked my hides, and I'm going to go ahead and cut into them, and hopefully that solution has penetrated a little bit deeper. So let's take a look. So here's the two pieces that I cut off my hide to test it, and you can see, unlike last time, it's brown all the way through on both of my pieces. So these are fully tanned, and we're ready to move on to the next step. So I just got done rinsing my hide off in the creek, just kind of removing some of the surface tannins and cleaning them up a little bit for the next step. So the next step is going to be beginning the process of conditioning my hides. So if I was to take my hides right now and just hang them up and let them dry out, they'd become rock hard and really stiff. So if I can take those hides and then soak them in a fat solution, what's called a fat liquor, I can get those oils and those fats in the hide, and then as I work it later on, it will remain that soft, nice, supple texture that I'm looking for. So the first step is just going to be getting these hides and putting them in this fat liquor. The fat liquor consists of about 12 egg yolks and about a half a liter of olive oil blended together so that they're fully mixed together and emulsified, and the oil's not floating on the top. It's all one liquid. And then I added about 2 gallons of lukewarm water to that. So this bucket's about halfway filled with that solution. And so I'll take these hides and put them in there and let them soak for about 10 minutes. Alright, so I let my hides soak for about 10 minutes, and now I'm just going to hang them up on this line. Alright, so I'm just going to leave these hides overnight to hang and partially dry out, and then I can continue with the conditioning process in the morning. So my hides have been hanging for about 24 hours, and they've dried up considerably, but they're still damp, which is important. I didn't want them to completely dry, but I wanted them to mostly dry. And so I'm just going to go ahead and take them off the line now and stick them back in that egg solution. So yesterday when I stuck the hides in here for just a few minutes before I hung them up to partially dry, that was just kind of a pre-soaking, just kind of to get a little bit of fats, a little bit of oils introduced into the hide. But since I left it hang overnight and dry out considerably and then added it back into here, now it's able to absorb a lot more of those fats and a lot more of those oils because it has space to absorb liquid. But now I'm just going to let them sit in here for a few minutes, get rehydrated, work them a little bit, and then I'm going to stick them back on the line, let them drip dry for just a few minutes to get some of that excess liquid out, and then I'm going to move on to the next step. So I let my hides dry for a few minutes and drip on the line, and now I'm just working them on this post here and just starting to open up the fibers a little bit before I move on to the next step. before I move on to the next stage, I want to have my hides fully dry. But if I just hang them up and let them dry, they're going to want to shrink considerably. So by tacking them out like this, I can allow them to fully dry without having a lot of shrinkage. So I went ahead and pulled my hides off of that board. I left them on there for about 3 days, and they got to the point where they were fully dry. And at that point, I went ahead and pulled them off the plywood. And so now I can go ahead and start to get ready for the next step. And the next major step is the final softening and the final oiling of these hides, and then they'll be completely done. In order to get to that point, I need to re-dampen back these hides, but I want to do it in a way that's very controlled and even throughout the hides. I don't want them sopping wet, but I need enough moisture in there that I can start to work them over a post without the grain cracking and damaging the hides. So I can do that by just rolling them up in some damp towels. So get some towels, wring them out the best you can to where it's just damp to the touch, and then you can roll your hides in those, let them sit overnight, and that moisture will transfer over into the hides, and then you can begin that final process. Alright, so I got my damp towels here, and I'm just going to go ahead and lay my hide in there with the grain down, and then I'm going to put a couple more towels on top of that. So I got my hides fully wrapped up in the damp towels, and I'm just going to let this sit overnight and then pull them out tomorrow morning, and I can begin the process of the final softening and the final oiling. The next step is going to be applying oil to the outside of the hide using this cloth, and I'm just going to simply use some olive oil for that. So now that I've got my hide all oiled up, the next step is to kind of take it to the post here and begin to open up those fibers, and just try to keep them open as the hide goes through the drying process, as that dampness starts to leave. If I don't keep the hide moving and I just let it fully dry out on its own, it's going to get pretty stiff. So I want to prevent that from happening just by working it continuously. So now I'm going to introduce a new step into the softening process, and this is called just rolling the hide. So if I put the grain side up and I roll up the hide like this, and then begin the process of rolling it like so, I'll get a smooth grain because the grain's not being compressed on itself. But if I flip it over and roll the grain side to the inside, and then work it, I'll get a wrinkly kind of alligator skin texture. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and do both sides like that, because I think I do want that kind of crinkly alligator skin texture. I think it looks pretty cool. So yeah, I'm just going to get going with that. I'm just going to go a little bit longer just in case there's a little bit of residual moisture, but here in a few minutes I'll call it and we'll be done. bark tan leather, 100% natural, start to finish. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, I had a lot of fun making these hides. I'm still a beginner when it comes to bark tanning, and I have a lot to learn. But that being said, I really enjoy the process, and I feel like it's something that I'm going to be doing a lot of in the future. So if you want to see what I make with these hides in future bark tanning videos, stay tuned. Until then, stay connected, take it easy, peace out.